And the new tech startup of the year is ClusterTruck.
In this interview series we call The Circuit, TechPoint serves up the human stories behind the major tech headlines in Indiana. I'm your host, Roger Schumann, Senior Relationship Manager at TechPoint. Today we talk to Chris Baggott, CEO and co-founder of ClusterTruck, along with COO Brian Howenstein. ClusterTruck is disrupting the growing food delivery industry by putting the well-being of their drivers first. An early pioneer in ghost kitchens, ClusterTruck is positioned as a leader in the projected $1 trillion industry. In this episode, we discuss the motivation behind founding ClusterTruck, how their kitchen operation differs from other delivery services, and what's on the horizon. Well, I am with Chris Baggott, the CEO and co-founder of ClusterTruck. Chris, thank you so much for allowing us into your building, and we got a chance to go into one of the restaurants today and see that as well
awesome.
at one of your kitchens. So thanks for that. So if you follow TechPoint and the work that we do, and I know you're very aware of TechPoint, this is a little different, right? This kind of technology company is a little different than what we're used to looking at. So tell me how ClusterTruck is a technology company.
You know, we started off to solve a technology problem, which is aligning preparing food and the timing of preparing food with the delivery. Where is the driver? When will they arrive to the kitchen? When should I cook the food? Where is the customer? Mm-hmm. And how can we maximize this process using machine learning and algorithms? To do that, because a model didn't exist, we literally had to build the prototype kitchens to kind of make the software work. It only worked if we controlled the entire stack, if you will. Okay.
So ClusterTruck is a ghost kitchen, right? I mean, you're comfortable with that term.
Yes.
And
ish.
Yeah, okay. Well, that might be interesting to talk about as well. But ghost kitchens, the growth has been phenomenal, right? The past few years, you might say you got lucky in terms of when you started your company. Pandemic hits and ghost kitchen growth is going through the roof. I've read one thing that says that, one report that says that ghost kitchen revenue could reach $1 trillion a year by 2030, right?
Right.
So you kind of got ahead of the curve on that. What are your plans to grow ClusterTruck for the next few years?
Sure. We kind of have two paths we're taking. But one is the technology itself. So when we started working on software in 2015, we didn't open a kitchen until 2016. Literally this week will be our 6th anniversary of our first kitchen. But now there's an entire ghost kitchen industry. So now there is a lot more opportunity for us to promote and license our software to other ghost kitchens without us having to physically own and operate restaurants. Great. And then the second area that we're looking hard at, and we're actually going down the path of, is franchising. So the entire ClusterTruck system, which includes not only the software, but also the food. But independently, there could be ghost kitchens that don't serve our orange chicken, Josh. You know,
yeah.
Sorry, inside joke. But,
yeah, no, I know the joke.
But yeah, so there'll be a complete ClusterTruck model that could be a franchise, and then freeing our software to go out and target all kinds of people who may be interested in managing their own delivery for ghost kitchens.
So in essence, the system that you built in 2015, because of the expansive growth that's taken place in ghost kitchens, you're now able to pick that up and drop that into other systems as well for other people to use.
Exactly. Yeah, it just didn't exist. We were the first ghost kitchen on earth, I think. So it, now the market is finally, and it's not there yet. Nobody is doing anything close, to the kind of volumes we're doing. Most ghost kitchens that you read about do 10 or 15 orders a day. We're going to do 800 orders a day in Indy.
Right.
And even our suburban kitchens will do well over 100,
wow.
Which, our worst performing kitchen is still the busiest ghost kitchen on earth, or the 5th or 6th because they're all ours. But that's the whole idea of the vertical integration.
Right.
And it all comes down to the actual software of managing the drivers. The other systems are all completely dependent on third parties, and that's proven it doesn't work.
Yeah.
But that's the only game in town. So
Yep.
that gets very exciting to entrepreneurs.
One of the things is, as we look around, this looks like a kitchen, so it looks familiar, but it's a ghost kitchen.
Yep.
I've been in kitchens before. It's not quite as noisy as other kitchens that I've been in. So, ghost kitchen doesn't mean it's quiet, right? So tell me a little bit about what's going on here and what's different than maybe somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest thing you're going to see different is that our software is going to control a lot of the process in here. So traditionally, when you're in a restaurant, you'll have expediters that'll be controlling the whole process. That'll be telling, different stages on the line when to fire different items, when to cook it, when things should be done. Here we control that all with software, and we have to do that in order to make that sync with what's going on with the kitchen, what's happening with the drivers, what's happening with the orders that are coming in.
Yeah.
We need all that to tie together. We need all that to integrate. We need to do some planning, some swapping around, some managing. In order to do that, it all has to happen with software. So it all happens with these screens, and we're able to take over a lot of those processes here with technology.
So how much does that software really dictate everything that's going on here today? Where people are, what food's being prepared?
A lot of it.
Yeah.
A lot of it. So software pretty much is basically the quarterback of the kitchen. So it's going to tell things when to fire, when not to fire, when to hold off. So software is right in the middle of it.
So I'm a user of ClusterTruck, so I can kind of see when my meal's being prepared, and you're even indicating to drivers, right? So they know when they're supposed to show up to pick up an order?
Yep. Yeah. So as a customer of ClusterTruck and looking at our wait times, looking at the website, you have a view right into our kitchen. So that's all data that's being pumped out in real time. Same thing with our couriers. We're managing our relationship with our couriers and our drivers all the same way. So we know what's happening in our kitchen. We know what's happening with orders coming in. We know what happens with orders being delivered, and all that works together in order to make ClusterTruck possible.
So, I've seen Uber Eats, I've seen Grubhub, everybody else. What's different about your drivers compared to other drivers? I've read that your drivers make a pretty good living.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that process and how that works, how it compares to Grubhub and everyone else?
Yeah, so when we designed the ClusterTruck system, we decided to put drivers right in the center of it. We tried to make them a core constituency. So if our drivers did not make a sustainable, profitable living, then this whole system wouldn't work. So one thing we discovered is that if you look at a third-party delivery driver, they're going to get maybe 1 or 2 jobs an hour. But that's not enough for them to actually compensate for their time. So we've turned out we needed to solve that problem and get them more jobs per hour. So at ClusterTruck, we get them 4 to 6 jobs an hour versus 1 to 2. And that's really the key to make this whole system work, is we keep their utilization very high, keep them working, and that helps them, and that helps us make all the economics work.
How do they engage? So, you don't just have 20 drivers that are working for ClusterTruck, right? They have the opportunity to engage with your software and figure out if there's work for them that day, right?
Yeah, so that's what's great about our system, is that there's no scheduling. It's purely on demand. So we also make sure we don't oversaturate our courier pool, because we want to make sure that the couriers who are in our loop, that they're making enough money. So if one of the things that, we believe, if DoorDash has 1,000 orders coming on, downtown here during lunchtime, it's going to take them 800 drivers to deliver those orders. But here at ClusterTruck, we do all our deliveries with a max of about 30 drivers here at our downtown kitchen.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that we don't oversaturate that pool. We keep them highly engaged and highly utilized, so that the economics end up working out best for everyone. So a courier comes on in the morning, they just say, hey, I want to work in the app. And as we have demand, we'll bring them on one at a time, as demand presents itself.
Other than meeting you and Chris, I really don't see anyone else that I know that works for ClusterTruck, right?
Yeah.
So the people that I see, that I know, are drivers.
Yeah, absolutely.
So to some degree, they're your interface, they're your public, right?
It's funny. It's, we're a restaurant where you'll never meet, an employee at ClusterTruck. The courier is the person who they're our front of house. Yeah. They're the person you're going to see and you're going to interact with most, and that's why it's really awesome the way our courier system has ended up. That with them being very happy and very engaged and keeping them at the forefront of our business, it is really valuable for us, obviously, as a business, that the person that we want to keep the person happy, who's the person who our customers interacting with, on a day in and day out business.
All right, so Chris, for those who aren't familiar with your career, I'd love to kind of maybe back up a little bit and talk about where you've been. I think most people know that you were one of the founders of ExactTarget. That was a pretty successful outcome. And then from there, you went and you did Compendium, had another successful outcome there. So, of course, if you look at all the success you've had with marketing software, it makes perfect sense for you to jump into the food business, right?
Well, yeah, yeah, totally. I think one of the things with, with me and like my trick is a frustration with the problem. Mm-hmm. I got involved in the food delivery space because I happened to see Grubhub go public. Watching Jim Cramer in the morning and interviewing the CEO, and he starts talking about small businesses, and we bring them this incremental volume. I just started thinking about the problem. Wait, I would never give away my customer data. And these small businesses are sometimes sucker for these kind of things. Incremental volume, for a small business usually means it's like extra business. It's going to be lower friction. And having been in small business prior to ExactTarget, I was a dry cleaner.
Right.
And so I understood like people coming in and trying to sell these marketing plans and I knew how valuable customer data was. From my background. So that was the first thing. Secondly, I have the mug in Greenfield. We were starting to take online orders and I could see the friction. It caused a lot of stress. So when I saw him talking about this incremental volume, I kind of said, that's a lie and it's not going to work. And the other idea that there are just so many moving parts. And there are even more moving parts now, right? And you need software to make delivery work with your other software, so you've got delivery software, integrated software, restaurant software, a separate marketing software, and just the whole thing is a mess. And I thought of it like FedEx, those of us old enough to remember before FedEx, if you were mailing something, shipping something, it's 5 to 7 days.
Yeah.
It's in the ether somewhere. You can't track it. You don't know what's happening. It's really expensive. And it goes through a bunch of middlemen. Most packages before FedEx were delivered in incremental volume in the belly of a TWA plane going to Kansas City. And he said, look, I'll get it to you tomorrow. And I'll get it to you at 10 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. But his audacity was, I've got to own the airplane. And in our case, we had to own the kitchen. We had to own the production facility to actually make that work. You have to control everything.
Yeah, to some degree, I think if you look at what a lot of companies are doing today, they're doing the opposite, right? I mean, they want to own as little as possible.
Right.
But with ClusterTruck, you want to own the entire process from the time that you're creating the food until you're actually delivering it curbside to a customer.
Right. I mean, the big change that's happening right now is this word incremental, right, versus disruptive. Incremental was Sears, right? Sears had everything, right? Mm-hmm. They sold everything. They had warehouses and catalogs and, they were shipping houses and plows in the 1800s out west. Along comes the internet and it was like this incremental add-on, right? It didn't become a core piece of their business. It was an add-on. And everything in food delivery is still considered an add-on, right? They don't consider it as its own space. Meanwhile, as you said, this is $1 trillion business. Right. It's like this is almost as big as the entire restaurant business. And everyone's still treating it like it's this incremental stepchild to the real restaurant. And what's interesting about the industry today is that restaurants are full. Everyone says the pandemic, and that's actually not exactly true. But when restaurants emptied, delivery coincidentally grew. But restaurants are full, and delivery is still growing, right? So who are we taking share from, right? We're not taking share from Mike Cunningham's restaurants. You can't get in them, right? Mm-hmm. But delivery is still growing, right? So, you're really taking share from people cooking their own food, right? So, so I think smart people are starting to recognize that delivery is its own category. It's not an incremental category that I have a few extra hours on a stove. I can cook a couple more grilled cheese sandwiches. Mm-hmm. This is an actual real business.
Now, you've described yourself as a one-trick pony with a really good trick, right? It's all about applying technology to hard problems. Or is there more to it? I mean, when you admitted that you were watching a newscast, learning about it was Grubhub, right?
Right.
And you realized that based on the experience that you've had with a couple of pretty successful companies, that there was something that you could apply to that. Was it that simple, or was it a lot more than that?
I'm sitting in a room full of engineers, so I don't want to say it was that simple. But I always threaten to get a tattoo saying, "How hard would it be? How hard would it be to?" But that is the thing for me, is just I get frustrated. I break UIs, and things like that just don't seem right, are probably not right. And so how would you solve that? And I'm fortunate to have super talented folks around me that can help me solve that.
Mm-hmm. You've noted too, you mentioned the Mug, one of your restaurants. You've also got Tyner Pond Farms.
Right, Tyner Pond Farm, yeah.
So you had ventured into food already.
Yeah.
Before you decided to go with ClusterTruck.
No, that modicum of experience, wasn't much, but it was enough to say, coupled with, again, my small business experience with dry cleaners, and seeing these people, you could just see the future. You could say, you're going to take my data and you're going to sell it to McDonald's, right? Mm-hmm. And when I go online to search for hamburger, you're going to offer my customer a competing hamburger because they're going to pay more. And that's, of course, exactly what's happened, right?
Absolutely.
And these companies are all completely built about big brands, and all the small companies that started them are left by the wayside.
But to a degree, you've also created a brand too, right, with ClusterTruck?
Right. Again, that's, we're at least transparent that we compete with restaurants to a point for delivery. But like I said, Mike Cunningham is a partner, investor, collaborator in ClusterTruck, because we do not compete with them, right? If you want to go out with your friends after work, or you want to take your significant other and go have dinner, you're going to do that, right? But, when you're sitting on your couch streaming Killing Eve, it's 7:00 at night, and you want something brought to you, that's our space.
Yep. So Brian, we'll talk a little bit about menu, right?
Yeah.
So you've been at this for 6 or 7 years now?
Yeah.
And so you've had the ability to kind of track what sells, what doesn't sell. But first off, how much does that affect what you put on the menu, what you take off of the menu?
Yeah. So data is a huge part of ClusterTruck, and that's one of the really awesome parts about being this vertically integrated restaurant, is that we have data from top to bottom. From a traditional restaurant, they know that they have a customer come in, they don't know who that customer is. Well, at ClusterTruck, we know who everybody is. You are a customer of ours. You interact with the app. We know the things you like, and we can make recommendations based on your ordering history, and we can see which items are popular, which ones don't sell, and then we can see really cool things like return rates. So we know if somebody has a certain item for their very first visit, there may be a 50% chance that they come back. But we know if they have this item for their first visit, maybe there's an 80% chance that they come back. So we can do really advanced analytics to know, what are the items that we should push towards you? What are the items that may need to cycle on and off the menu? What items do we need to tweak? But data is what makes all that possible. Okay. And it's a really key advantage to ClusterTruck.
So you've benefited from that 6 years or so, right?
Yeah.
But you had to start somewhere, right?
That's right.
So 6 years ago, you're sitting in a room and you're trying to figure out, what are we going to put on the menu, right?
Yeah.
So how did those decisions get made? And let's even narrow in on something you're popular for, that I think you're way ahead of the curve on, and that's tots, right? How did tater tots get onto the menu, and why are they so popular now? What did you know about tater tots that we didn't know 6 years ago?
It's funny. I'm not sure what we knew or not. It's beyond the data we have, we also have a really incredible culinary team. So, our executive chef, Tim McIntosh, him in combination with, we have some awesome advisors in the Cunningham Restaurant Group who have helped us, with that initial menu, and Tim built out some awesome recipes. For sure. That all this came from. You get an email you see from Chef Tim or Chef James, or all of our awesome chefs here in Indianapolis. They built out that initial one, and at that point, it's their years of industry experience to say, these things are awesome. These things are people are going to love. And so, let's start there, and then we'll see what the data says.
Yeah. So how much has it changed from the early days to now?
It's gone through phases. So, we've had some phases where we had the initial menu. Some of that stuff was really great, and then we tried some things. We learned what was good, what was not. We brought some old favorites back. there are some things that's even sold really great in the old days that we're still trying to bring back. So there's a lot of the balance between, knowing the data, knowing the reorder rates. How does that work in our kitchen? What's really interesting here in this kitchen is we have all these concepts that come off of a single make line. So it's not like we have little individual restaurants stacked up in our kitchen. So we're able to do that with a lot of cross-utilization of ingredients. So, not only does the data go into that, but understanding how we can best run our kitchen, knowing that we have these ingredients in the kitchen, what are the different items we can make with it. So there's a lot of management that goes into it, a lot of chef's expertise, a lot of data, and it's a really cool way to kind of combine those two worlds that haven't had a lot of cross-pollination in the past.
So that data has to be pretty strong to say that you're going to bring a new menu item on if it's going to mean a disruption to the way your kitchen is set up right now, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So we're typically not going to bring on a new menu item if it's got a unique ingredient that's only going to be used on one item. We look at, if we're going to bring something in, what are 4 or 5 different items that we could put on a menu and be able to make sure that's really well utilized. And the same thing for taking an item off. We have some really interesting data that says, well, a certain item may only sell a certain amount. By having that item, it unlocks a whole nother group of people being able to order. So there's, the veto vote. Want to make sure you always have vegetarian, vegan, things that, there's something for everyone here. Yeah. And even though it may not be the top item on our product mix, it's really important. So we're able to see all that data, see how things interrelate, and make sure we're making the right decision with our menu.
All right, so let's talk about beyond Indianapolis. So we've got Indianapolis, we've got Kansas City, we've got Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah.
And you've got a great portion of Indianapolis as well.
Yeah.
Have you found that in certain areas, like for instance, are there things on the menu in Kansas City that aren't on the menu in Indianapolis, things that are unique?
Yeah, so it's 95% the same. So beyond some regional specials that we may do, just some unique things, it's almost identical. What's really fascinating to see is that our mix, our product mix, is almost identical between the kitchens too. So we've had a lot of theories hypotheses, will certain cities have different, tastes or whatever, but you still see tots at the top of the menu, you still see the lazy breakfast burrito, you see the buffalo chicken wrap, those things always come up to the top. So it's really fascinating to see just how consistent it is across markets.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the future of ClusterTruck. So since establishing yourself here, 2015, you basically were holed up and probably in a room with a bunch of engineers, came up with the software, opened your first kitchen in 2016.
Right. Literally 6 years ago to this week.
So
tomorrow, next day, yeah.
And so now there are how many kitchens in the Indianapolis area?
So we have 7 total, about to build our 8th. We have 5 here and 1 in Kansas City and 1 in Columbus, Ohio.
Right, yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about. So why Kansas City, why Columbus, Ohio? How did those come about?
Because I'm not very smart. And I didn't know a lot about the restaurant business. So, when we went out, Indy downtown was such a wild success that we thought we better run to other cities that look like Indy. And what we didn't recognize in part of the success with the Indy kitchen was, that we're all here. Like every single one of us will tell our friends to order. And, people know me, I could... there's a Exact Target alumni channel that I could go on to and say, order from ClusterTruck, and 100 people will. But nobody in Denver, Colorado really cares about Chris Baggott or any of us. And what we didn't realize that the key to the restaurant business is really about saturation and saturating markets. So, we go out to these markets and they kind of struggle. But to answer your question, we pick cities that look like Indy: Columbus, Kansas City, Minneapolis, Denver, Cleveland to some extent. But we could not build the brand fast enough to make the restaurants make money. And that's a big thing that's informing our future, is the software has always worked, but the economics of the restaurant haven't necessarily always worked. And then we realized we are in 2 different businesses here. Yeah. And it's very hard to be a master of either. We know we're a master of the software business, because even a failing Denver was still delivering in 21 minutes and 4 jobs per hour for the drivers. And and that's the biggest key to us. Like, our software treats the driver as if he's the core constituency or she is the core constituency. The machine will err on the side of the driver over the customer almost every time, because we know if it's good for the driver, it's going to be good for the customer. But some days you'll see, up on this board, see, it's coming up here in a minute, but you'll see delivery times that might be in the 60, 70 minutes. But we can also see kind of the orders, we call it in the cloud, so a little bit into the future, and we say, oh, that's like a very short bubble. If I bring on more drivers, I can make that time go down, but it's a temporary blip, and then I have too many drivers on. And if I have too many drivers on for afternoon volume like we're in now, everyone's going to make less money. Like we think about diluting the driver pool. So if we have to make a trade between diluting the driver pool or having the customer have an hour-long delivery, we're going to choose the hour-long delivery. The customer knows that even at an hour, because we're timing the driver and the cooking of the food, that my food is never going to be older than 7 minutes, right? If you have an hour-long delivery on a third party, odds are your food is 55 minutes old by the time it gets to you. But in our case, the customer knows we're not cooking the food until exactly the right time to get it to you in under 7 minutes from cook time.
I love your transparency, that you're willing to admit that, we took this step and maybe it didn't work out because you've been there. You're a proven serial entrepreneur. What else have you learned along the way? So, I mean, you noted that, like, hey, it wasn't as easy to go into places like Denver or wherever else. But what else have you learned along the way that could be helpful?
I think that saturation thing was a big thing. I mean, we spent a lot of investors' money on building facilities and trying to market into them and make them work. And, again, the challenge of having this minuscule delivery zone of 6 or 7 minutes, 90% of our marketing dollars are being heard by people who can't buy the product, right? So, and that's where I got very lucky and stumbled across, somebody introduced me to Steve Ellis, the founder of Chipotle. And basically, Chris, man, we had 16 Chipotles in Denver before we ever thought about leaving the Denver Boulder metro area, right? You need to close these things and go home and saturate your market. And a part of it also was the way we were cooking food. Indy was an instant success, but the kitchen we built literally requires about $3 million a year to break even. Now, we do 3 times that now, but that's not going to work in the suburbs. So we had to do a lot of, figuring out how to cook food in a very, very different way. And that's brand new for us, right? Me, and, from a technology standpoint, but also, a challenge, so.
Yeah, you mentioned the suburbs. So you've had some pretty cool partnerships come along the way as well, right? So you partnered with Kroger.
Yeah, there's
Tell me a little bit about that.
Great example of kind of a mistake, right? The hope was so we're struggling trying to build boxes, right? These units, and they're expensive and time consuming and permits, and it's like, oh man, if only there was an easy way. Like, who's got a lot of underutilized kitchens? Well, grocery stores have a lot of underutilized kitchens, right? There's a deli in every grocery store. There's a hood. There's plenty of electricity. There's 3 compartment sinks, all the things you have to learn to be in a restaurant business. So, and Kroger was very open to the idea. Cold called them, took a couple months, finally found somebody, and they were all super receptive. And we went down this path where, we're going to try this and open a couple of kitchens. And, we built Max and Irma's just completely separate, and they were trying to see if a brand of Kroger Delivery Kitchen would work. He landed on that. Doesn't work, but, they were great partners in the respect that, we're going to try a bunch of things and see what works and what doesn't work. At the end of the day, they're in the grocery store experience game, and we're in the ghost kitchen. Like, we don't want a public facade. We don't want to be in a busy area, So, like a Fisher's, for example, where it's great, very successful, but, we offer pickup there because that's what Kroger wants. And, nobody really wants pickup, but all the other companies that can't deliver profitably are trying to convince you to come and get it, right? But if you come and get it, the food is going to be old, but that's now on you, right? I had someone that I talked to this 2 to 3 months ago, and he had left a review about this soggy Nashville hot chicken sandwich. So I look him up, and the food sat, till he got it, it sat 18 minutes. Had he taken delivery, he would have had that food in 6 minutes from the time it was cooked. So it sat 18 minutes. So I call him, I'm like, hey, I'm just trying to figure out, why you didn't take delivery. Tell me about this experience, and really nice. And he's like, well, yeah. So I picked it up, but then I was going to get something in the store. So how long did that take? 15 minutes, great. Then I checked out, how long it take? 5 minutes. Then I had to walk to my car. Yeah, how long did that take? 5 minutes. Then I drove home, 8 minutes. Then I, had to unload my car, of course, my groceries, and put them away. Then I ate the sandwich. He's like, holy cow, this sandwich was an hour old, right? And, that's the breakthrough for us is delivery is always going to be better than pickup. But Chipotle's out there trying to convince everybody to use the Chipotle lane because they can't afford to deliver. And that's the breakthrough of our software is we make delivery profitable.
So if you go back really to your start into food with Mug, with Tyner Ponds, right? I mean, that's always been about quality, right?
Right.
And so with ClusterTruck, the focus really is on quality, but at the same time, profitability on top of quality.
Exactly. I mean, there's David Chang, the famous chef. And David Chang, had this article when we were first starting out a few years ago, and he was talking about this Philly cheesesteak that, painstakingly worked on this recipe to make this Philly cheesesteak taste good after 45 minutes. And we're just like, dude, solve the 45-minute problem, and you can serve any Philly cheesesteak you want. I mean, you see our packaging, like everything is completely normal because we've solved the time problem, right? It's Tom Hanks in Castaway. Remember that opening scene in Russia? And never commit the sin on turning your back on time. But, we're counting seconds all the way through the process. Shaving it here, shaving it here, shaving it here. But especially, I do have a tattoo that says, don't ship maybes. And a maybes is anything that sits for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So, don't send out food that you're not 100% confident in.
Yeah.
And you see that in our reviews. If you look at third-party delivery reviews, they're all 1 star. You look at our reviews in every one of our kitchens, we're 5 stars. And people are blown away because there is no expectation of quality. Like, that's not the problem that you're hiring delivery to do for you. You just want the calories, But when you get ClusterTruck, you're just not going back to DoorDash, right? Because it's good. It's delivered by friendly, engaged people. Because we have the best job in the gig economy, we get the best gig economy people, and you probably saw them at the kitchen.
Yeah.
Nice cars, nice people. Everyone knows everyone's name because they're not a bunch of randoms that have a 2-week lifespan. Brian probably told you, something like 75% of our drivers started driving the week the kitchen where they work open. Like they never leave. And we have drivers that are 6 years old here at Indy because it's the best gig. And if you want this kind of flexibility, and that's kind of our breakthrough.
Yeah. So I got a chance, as you mentioned, to tour one of your kitchens today and talk to Brian. We talked a little bit about data and how important data is to what's going on in the kitchen today and how it's informed how you've gotten to where you are today. But what about the future? So I love talking to technology companies because I know that they are collecting data, and not data to infringe on someone's privacy, but they're collecting this data to inform what their next step is going to be. So you've been at this for 6 years now, as you've said. What have you collected what kind of data have you collected that's been able to inform where you're going to go next?
Well, what I love about machine learning is, it's like a child, right? And so we're sitting here with like this 8-year-old. Like we've got 6 years in it. It can like ride a bike and it can do its homework and, maybe give itself a bath.
Right.
And, by the time any of our competitors come along to be an 8-year-old, we're going to be going on dates and, frat parties and, it's going to be at a completely different level of maturity. And so that gets us really excited. The data is just super informative. We have this super broad menu, and we have this recommendation engine that works really, really well about what you will like next, based on all our customers and everything they've ever ordered and everything you've ever ordered. And, it's just the insights are incredible. If you order a Chipotle shrimp taco, are you a Mexican food eater? Are you a savory food eater? Are you a seafood eater? Right? And that's going to inform what we offer to you as what we think you might like next.
Okay.
And when you have a broad menu like us, helping the customers sort through that, I'm all in favor of course, I've been in the data business my whole life, but, I will give you every scrap of data to make my life easier and better. And that's really kind of how we approach this. We don't use our data that much for marketing, right? We use it a lot to make the system better. What kinds of foods do we get complaints on? When we launched with and we made all of this in-house, but a tofu kimchi vegetarian burrito. and it was one of the top 5 sellers. But then we looked in the data after a few weeks, and we realized that nobody ever reordered it. And if it was the first ClusterTruck item you had, you are never coming back. So then it's like, okay, what item should we serve a first-time customer, right? To make sure that we get a high reorder rate.
Right.
Like, you are going to like this food. So what are our most highest reordered items for a first-time customer is an important piece of data. Secondly, obviously, kill the kimchi
Right.
tofu burrito, but that kind of thing, just, all across the system. What do we get the most complaints about? What do we, pad thai it's very polarizing, but it's our highest reorder rated food. But also one of our most, when I was in college in 1975, I was wandering through the streets of Bangkok and, this is not that, okay. Yeah, it's not that, you're right, but it's pretty good. So,
So as we look at the future for ClusterTruck, we've talked about some pretty significant things that are coming down the pike. One of them is the software. So ClusterTruck, as we have known it for the last 6 years, has been the software and the restaurant.
right.
But now you're talking about being able to pick up that software and allow other people to use it. Talk
Right.
to me more about that, how that decision came to be and what it's going to look like.
Well, yeah, thank you. You can't go to any kind of conference in our space, which is restaurants, and not hear everyone bemoaning the entire third-party delivery relationship, right? It's bad for the drivers, and they can't make enough money, so they have to be subsidized by the third parties. So now the third parties can't make enough money. The fees are too high on the consumer, and the quality is not good enough, and the fees are too high on the restaurant, right? So there's nobody's happy with this, and yet you've got this massively growing business. And people are trying to solve the problems kind of on the periphery of what we do, and really believing that the third party is the only way to do that last mile delivery. And, we know we have an alternative. We have a 6-year-old beta test here with ClusterTruck. We've delivered literally millions of orders and averaged a 7-minute delivery time from cook to in your hands. We average 4 jobs an hour. We average an under 10% delivery cost. 10% is the line item you would use if you were scooping food at Chipotle. That's what front of house costs. So we're delivering at a lower cost than you can serve in a restaurant. That's a huge breakthrough.
Yeah.
So, lots of folks are starting to reach out to us what are you doing and how are you doing this? And as you said before, this ghost kitchen is it's massively growing. And we're the only ones on the planet that I know of that can deliver profitably for free. We, for fun, ordered from Five Guys the other day, and I think 2 cheeseburgers totaled something like $47. Again, $8 DoorDash service fee, right? Not counting whatever. Yeah, the delivery fee is only $2.99 or whatever, but then there's this $8 service fee, and you dig into that, and it's like, well, tax, and helping us keep the software running. But DoorDash can't make money, right? Their stock has been like this. And the only lever they have to pull to make money is fees. And the market has pretty much reached its tolerance on fees. So we just feel like there's a spectacular opportunity for us.
What's the time frame on that launch?
We have unnamed customers lined up, and a lot of them have to build facilities, but we will be ready to go in the fall for sure. We will be live in the fall with customers.
Chris, thanks so much for your time today and opening up not only your office but your kitchen to us to get a good glimpse into what ClusterTruck is doing, and we're excited to see what's going to happen next.
Sounds good. Thanks. Thank you. Appreciate it.